Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So sorry these videos were so steady last week and now they're kind of all over the place. That is because my hours are all over the place, so just wanted to get that out of the way. Now there's also something I wanted to get out of the way before we get into this video. So I know my last Q&A I answered a question of like, oh, why I wouldn't give background, more background into my ex and, all of that. And I know some of you weren't satisfied with my answer, so let me clarify that. To be honest, I'm not that type of person to sit here and just speculate, right? And put words into people's mouths. They weren't talkative that much about themselves, if that makes any sense. Like, literally, I know this sounds juvenile, which it was. I mean, we were young. It was really hard to even get out of, like, how their day was going, like, my ex. And, like, it was, again, that should have been, like, a red flag, but, I was 14 when all of this started, right? So you can't really, I didn't have, I don't want to say experience or knowledge, because I did have some knowledge, the full blown out there in the world type of thing. And I know that doesn't really satisfy a lot of people, and that kind of seems like a cop-out, but unfortunately, that's all I have. Again, I'm not here to speculate or put words into people's mouths. I can only tell you the information that I have. Again, it's not a lot, but unfortunately, that's what it is. So to get on to this topic of my parents versus the school. So let me break this down for you guys. So when things started to pick up, like a lot more complaints that I would give, and of course the school would kind of look into the, complaints that I was giving, like they were calling me names, which again, that sounds very juvenile, and to the school that even sounded juvenile, that, oh, they're calling you names, like suck it up. But like, when they're calling me the C word or, other names, it's very, you do want to start complaining about that. And, they would go and get their side of the story because they couldn't just, of course, rely on my words. And I'm going out of focus. Sorry, now we're back. And, it got to the point where, I was complaining almost every single day. So, a phone call would go into my parents and being like, your child is bringing this information to us. We have looked into it and we haven't really found out information that supports her. So she's kind of being a lot of hearsay. So, my parents would talk to me, or they wouldn't talk to me, but I could tell that, they were frustrated in something. And, it started to go like that, back and forth a little bit, And, they would question me a little bit and be like, yeah, this stuff really happened. And, it would be like, well, again, it wouldn't really be, like, concrete proof, right? When the physicality got involved into it, of basically them beating me, pushing me, choking me in the hallways and stuff, I would bring it to, the office's attention. I would, talk to them about it, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to talk to an adult, right? And, my parents would be brought into it, and they would be called into the office, and some of the times, like, I wasn't aware of it, and then other times I would be called to the office after my parents would leave, and basically the principal or the VP or my counsel, whoever they were talking to, would tell me to basically shut up, that there was no proof, that they didn't want to look into it, that I was just being, crazy, that I was just, making all of this stuff up because he broke up with me and he's moving on and I should do the same. Like, it was very, like, to them, it was me clinging on to my ex and his friends, that it was my fault, that it was, all of this was happening because it was my fault, that I was asking for it. that I was egging them on. And, you know, my parents would get kind of the opposite of that. They would get the whole I'm the troublemaker type of thing, right? That I was being I was crying wolf, basically. And, you know, my parents would talk to me, and, you know, I'd get, you know, my phone taken away, my phone privileges. But it got to the point where my parents really started to realize that something was wrong with, I didn't want to go to school. And like they would tell me, like, stay away from them, right? And when I went on, like, there was field trips and stuff and they were there, I would decline to go on them. And, you know, I would tell my parents to be like, hey, I'm declining this. This is, like, my situation. They are going on it, so I'm choosing not to go on it. I would talk to them about that. My parents would be like, hey, you know, that's cool. Like, we understand that. It sucks, but we understand that. And then, you know, when I would tell the school that, you know, I'm taking the responsible choice of taking myself out of that situation so nothing would happen, they would call my parents. And they would tell them that, you know, this is wrong, that my behavior is wrong, that, you know, I would lose marks or whatever. This would go on bad on my record on a school trip, like, really. And, you know, my parents would be like, well, wait, okay, hold on, like, stop. Like, you're telling her to stay away from them, right? And we've talked to her and she's agreed to that and she's doing that. And yet you're telling us that our daughter is doing the wrong thing, that her behavior isn't right, that she's not, you know, she's blowing everything out of proportion. Like, my parents started to question that. And they started to bring that to their attention. And they would kind of, like, backtrack, be like, oh no, she's blowing this out of proportion. Like, she's making a big deal out of it. Like, there's going to be staff there and stuff. And, you know, I would still decline. I'd be like, you know what? I still don't feel comfortable going on these trips or being in these situations. And, you know, I am doing this for my safety and sanity. And the school was kind of twisting my words with it and, you know, telling my parents that. And it was very confusing for them because they're like, wait, hold on, stop. Like, you're telling us that she was, like, this bad person all along. And when she's making the right choice of taking herself out of this situation, why aren't you supporting her? Like, that was the question that they would bring to the school. Like, why aren't you supporting her? And basically they would come back and be like, oh, well, she's cried wolf, or this is just really childlike behavior. And it really pissed off my parents. And, you know, they did question me going into I was into my last year, of if I wanted to transfer to the schools. And I had this scholarship and I worked very hard on this. So I was just going to start the scholarship of going to college and high school and working. And I told them that I wanted the scholarship. You know, at the time, that's what I thought I wanted. Like, after everything, I thought that I, you know, sorry, deserved this. And, you know, they supported it. And so we came up with a game plan that we talked to the school about. If I didn't need to be at the school, I wouldn't go, like, to my high school. If I didn't need to be there, I wouldn't go. That they would send the paperwork with me, and, you know, I'd do the work and then hand it in. If I had to go in, there had to be space between, like, us. Like, they had to promise my safety, basically. And, you know, they did. They promised, but they did not uphold that. I did a video about how, I think it was in my coming out video, that, you know, I basically was on the opposite side of the classroom and the teachers told me to go over to them. They basically ordered me to do that. And they were putting me in compromised situations. So I would tell my parents and I would be like, hey, they are doing nothing. So my parents would call. And, they would give them this sad story that, oh, they're just going through a lot with their father and the friends, and, we're doing the best that we can, of their safety, and we just have to, be nice and stuff. And my parents thought that was bullshit. So when they basically sat me and my ex down and told us, we had to be friends. But the school, we had to be friends. And I basically said a big fuck you to them. They did not like that. And I remember telling my parents this, be like, this is really, really bad. Like, it just didn't make sense to me, of like why they wanted this image, that nothing was going on. So let me backtrack a little bit. Basically, me going into my grade 9, so this is 3 years prior, there was an incident with this girl. I mean, she was beautiful, an amazing person. Like, she was really sweet. She was really good looking. I mean, really down to earth, really sweet, really kind. And she was getting bullied on the school bus and a little bit in the school. And the school did absolutely nothing. This was even, I do believe, on the news. It was mentioned that she was getting bullied really, really badly, and the school did nothing. I didn't discover this. Like, I heard, rumors and stuff, but I didn't really discover it until I started to dig into my school's background. Because for me, I deal with facts. I like facts, right? And evidence. So I wanted to just see, like, if I was going crazy. Like, if this was me, maybe I am blowing shit out of proportion, And I found this out. And I did a little bit of research background into it. Because I found a news article, and then I found the news segment on it. And it was another cover my ass situation with the school. It wasn't really handled. It was kind of handled in the shadows. So I don't know if there was a settlement or something, but I knew there was a legal situation that went into it. So already the school didn't really have a good mark. So that's again, I don't want to, play guesses, but from the evidence that, is presented, I do believe that had a major part in it, that they didn't want another black mark on the school's name. But it was very rough. Like, my family, had my back the best way that they could. Again, I didn't really go into the full detail of what exactly happened to me at that time. I wasn't ready to come forward with a lot of the stuff, but I did give them certain situations. And, I could tell that they could see near the end of, like, grade 12 that I was just absolutely, just tired and exhausted, and I went from skin and bones to, a little bit heavier. I was just drowning, and I think, my parents, they didn't want to push, because I think they could tell in that situation that if they pushed, I would completely shut down, and that's not on them, that's on me, because I would have, like, if they pushed me and they wanted more, I would have, shut down. So one of the major things that I also think my parents realized was when I was almost sexually assaulted in my cooking class. And, I talked to my best friend about it, and, my parents needed that information because, like, again, the school was playing this whole, like, your daughter's, you know, this evil person type of thing. And when my best friend confirmed that with my parents, well, actually my brother, and then my brother confirmed it with my parents, that this actually took place in the class, I think the wheels in my parents' head started spinning of like, there is something wrong. So they went in and talked with the principal, and they, you know, confronted them and being like, hey, like, what the hell, type of thing. And the school just said, oh, we'll keep them separated and that's all that we can do. It's you know, his word against her word type of thing. And I think that's when my parents was like, okay, this is really fucked up. Like, what? Like, nothing was done about it. And they couldn't really go to the police. I couldn't go to the police because this is where it gets sketchy. It happened on school property, so the police would have to do, like, you know, they would have to look into it. But if the school kind of like blocked them out and said, oh, you know, nothing really happened, we're dealing with it in-house type of thing, their hands were tied. They couldn't really do anything. Which is, again, fucked up. You know, I had to deal with the police before of them basically telling me shut the hell up. There was no evidence and stuff. So it was a whole lot of things. Like, my parents supported me the best way that they could, like I said, but there was a lot of shit and moving pieces that happened at that school. And, you know, it seems pretty, like, really like your parents should have been able to do more. And, you know, again, they did what they could with the information that they had, that I gave them. But of course, you know, the school came back and said, oh, you know, we're handling it, or, you know, it's been dealt with, or, you know, your daughter's blowing it out of proportion. That was the main thing, that I was blowing things out of proportion, that I was crying wolf, that there wasn't enough evidence. But the whole thing is that the school had cameras everywhere. Of course, not in the bathrooms or the classrooms, but the hallways. And a lot of the incidents, most of them, happened, like 80% of the abuse happened in the hallways. And you're telling me none of the cameras caught anything? That's bullshit. They were just covering their asses, because there's multiple. But yeah, like, I'm very thankful that I had parents that, you know, supported me the best way they can. Again, in the beginning, really sketchy, but I mean, of course, you know, a lot of things were, you know, they're the adults, I'm the kid, like, but then when things started to pick up and my parents, you know, really started supporting me and realizing that, hey, something was wrong, you know, they did really do the best that they can. There was, near the end, I would say, a lot of the support came for them. You know, there was a few situations that, prior to that really sucked. Jesus. But yeah, that's kind of wrapping up about my parents versus the school. And it's complicated, guys. There isn't, and I know how that sounds, but I know some people are going to come and say, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And I get that, and I respect that. But again, the school tied their hands, tied my hands. It was, again, a lot of she said, he said, and, you know, they didn't want to give the evidence of the cameras. They didn't want to believe. They basically wanted to stick their head in the sand and pretend that it didn't exist, just to, you know, be nice to them, because they were dealing with a lot, with, you know, two of them with their father and stuff, and they didn't know what they were capable of, and they just wanted it to be brushed under the rug type of thing, just to uphold their image. And so you're probably saying, then why are you talking about all of this? I think it's time that stuff needs to be heard and talked about. That it can't be brushed under the rug anymore. Yes, it is 10 years later and a lot of things have changed. But here's the thing. You know, if somebody is going through something like this, bullying, whatever, and I know that a lot of the staff has changed at that school, but I'm not here to say, well, it probably won't happen then. I'm not one to judge, because it could happen, you know, it could happen still there, or it could have happened after me or before me, and people are out there and being like, holy shit, I went through something like this, I went through bullying or whatever, and the school was silent, or didn't help, or made me feel crazy. Or it doesn't even have to deal with my school, it could deal with anybody's school, you know? I think it's time that a light gets shined on that schools do cover up a lot of things, just to, you know, make their image nice and tidy type of thing. So I will be going deeper into like the school and stuff in other videos, but I do have other videos planned, like I keep saying, but I figured I'd get this one out and kind of tie up those loose ends. But of course, if there's any more questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll answer them, or answer them in a video. But please remember to be respectful and nice, and, you know, just remember that this is the community and other people will read those comments or see these videos and, you know, might make them not feel so alone. So remember to be kind, send some love and positivity into the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Remember, never give up, always keep fighting, you're enough, and you're very much loved. Until the next video, guys, which is probably later in this week. My hours are kind of crazy. I'm gonna try for Wednesday. Don't hold me to that, but I do have a day off then. So, anyways, guys, I love you, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.